Today will be a day to remember for the rest of your life. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is excited to present the Heart of a Hall of Famer program connected by Extreme Networks. With over 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 47 states and countries all over the world, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans important life values like commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty.
But you have to make right decisions even when nobody's watching you.
Well, respect is not just given out. It's not handed out like a brochure. It's earned.
Today, you are presented with an opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more important than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. They didn't roll out the bed great. They put the work in, on the field, in the weight room, in the classroom, in their communities. They made themselves a Hall of Famer on and off the field.
Your feet can't take you where your mind's never been.
Because you can make it, but it's just gonna take a little hard work and some effort and the drive and determination.
And today, you will learn you can do the same thing they did. You don't have to have a gold jacket or a bronze bust to make a difference in the lives of others. It's your decision whether you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
If attitudes are contagious, is your attitude worth catching?
It's integrity as well, because when you decide to pursue something and you don't quit, that says a lot about you.
Commitment to excellence. We can all aspire to be the best.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, the Heart of a Hall of Famer program, connected by Extreme Networks.
For those of you young people out there who want to play the game of football, I wanted you to know some of the things that it really took from me, and maybe you'll learn from my experience. Set your goals high. You know it can happen for you. Get the most out of your abilities. That's what Frank Cush taught us in college. And that's what I think young people who take anything seriously should try to do. Remember, there are no limits.
And with that, welcome to another installment of a Heart of a Hall of Famer series connected by Extreme Networks here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, where it is our mission to honor the greatest of the game, preserve its history, promote its values, and celebrate excellence together. With the values being commitment, courage, honesty, integrity, and respect, where we believe those values help signify a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but also a great man on and off the field. My name is Jack Prusser. I'm the Youth Education and Leadership Coordinator here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we are very fortunate enough today to have one of 382 Pro Football Hall of Famers, Mr. Mike Haynes, today in Canton, Ohio, to come speak to students and guests today about the values of the game of football and what he has learned throughout his career. Before we introduce him, I do have some thank yous I'd like to dish out. Firstly, thank you to our great partner, Extreme Networks, for allowing us to do this program here in Canton into schools all across the country. We are very fortunate for them, as well as the teachers and administrators that allow the students to get to hear this program and really buying into the beliefs and values that this program can provide. And students today and guests that were fortunate enough to be here, thank you guys for attending this program specifically. Without you guys attending and your support, it would just be me up here talking to Mike Haynes, which I wouldn't mind doing, but you guys get to enjoy and get to hear Mike's stories as well. With that, though, we do ask that you guys please silence any cell phones, as well as any audio devices that you may have on you. Throughout the program today, we'll be opening up to you guys for some questions. I have a set of my own, so you guys are fortunate enough as well to get to ask some questions. So I'll come to you guys and just say, state your name and where you're from, and we'll get to you through that way as well. So with that, we're going to introduce Pro Football Hall of Famer Mike Haynes. Let's give Mike a round of applause here as he walks up.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, we'll get started with our favorite question. So the values of the Pro Football Hall of Fame: commitment, courage, honesty, integrity, and respect. So which one of those sticks out to you the most?
Respect.
Respect. Why do you think respect sticks out the most?
Well, when you look at the things that you've gone through and the things that you're experiencing, if you respect the people that are talking to you and they respect you, hopefully it's because of your honesty and your desire and all these other super positive things. And if that's the case, you're on the right track.
Absolutely. Respect, is very important. As we do have some guests and students in here, as I mentioned, obviously from a student standpoint, respect goes to your parents, to your teachers, to any educator, administrators you have, even your friends, right? You got to show respect because that helps build relationships. And same, when you're a guest and just, a general adult, right? You show respect to the others around you, the character qualities that you still, people you work with, interact with daily. Respect goes a long way.
Well, and with respect, if the person who is talking is honest and you respect his honesty, I respect you, that's huge. That's huge in terms of giving you a guideline of where you want to go. If you can trust that person, you can go a long ways. And so when they're explaining things to you and you believe in what they're saying, you can do a lot of good things.
So tying into a little bit of respect, I kind of want to tie back earlier in your career. So you were drafted early on by the Patriots, a very respectable organization in the National Football League. How did you handle that expectation, getting drafted, by the Patriots at a high level in the first round?
I was a 5th pick, but that was the year 1976 that the Seattle Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came into the National Football League. And so before the draft, teams are calling all around and talking to the players and asking them different questions. They want to know a little bit more about the guy than just what kind of football player he is. And when Tampa and Seattle called me, I said, why are you guys calling me? You don't know much about me. I was really thinking, if I went to the Seattle or Tampa, I'm probably not going to win any games in my first year at all, And my college team was undefeated. We were 12-0, beating Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. I was used to winning. I didn't want to go from winning to losing. And so I told both those two teams, you guys don't want me. I was trying to talk them out of drafting me. You don't want me. And then when they passed on me during the draft, I was glad. And then I found out I was drafted to the Patriots. I wasn't so glad about that because I think they had 3 victories the year before, and I'm like thinking, oh, they're probably not a good team. And I'm like, oh man, this is crazy, So I wasn't super happy about it. But then when I found out that the reason that they had that record was because the year before, they had a tremendous amount of injuries on their offense and their defense. And so their star players were injured, even guys like their quarterback, Jim Plunkett. And they had to go with a guy named Steve Grogan and all these other players. And so it was really, I had no idea. But once I got there after the draft and they picked me, and I got a chance to see these guys in practice and meet them in the locker room before we went out on the field, I'm looking at these big linemen and these fast-looking running backs and these great wide receivers. When we went out and practiced, I couldn't believe how good these guys were. And as good as they were, and they only had 3 victories, I'm thinking the NFL must be loaded with super talented players. And this team is not loaded with super talented players. And so it was very, very scary for me realizing that the NFL players or teams are going to be loaded with guys that are way better than the Patriots. And I found out later, I was wrong. The Patriots were loaded with players. They all just got injured or something like that. And that helped me feel better, but it was probably several games before that we won before I felt like that was going to be the case. And so I wanted to help. I came my senior year in college, we were undefeated. And so I was a punt returner, so I wanted to return punts, I wanted to return kicks, I wanted to do all these things to help our team, and they let me do it. And they had never had anybody return a punt for a touchdown in the history of the Patriot team. Can you believe that? I can't believe it. That was like 16, 18, something like that years. No one returned a punt for a touchdown? Come on. And so I returned 2 my rookie year. And so I also got a lot of interceptions because, one, I was a rookie. And they're going to pick on this young rookie kid. They didn't know what kind of athlete I was. And I didn't know what kind of quarterbacks and wide receivers I was covering. I was just doing my job. I was very fortunate to have a great defensive back coach in college and then in the pros. And the coach that I had was really a man-to-man guy, not a zone guy. And so I loved playing man-to-man. I didn't like zone too much. Any of you guys in here who played defense and you like man-to-man, you got something going for yourself. The zone guys, who couldn't do that, right? So I was blessed to have the skills that I had, the talent that I had in college, the guys that I worked against that really helped me prepare for man-to-man in the pros. And I was really blessed to have a great defensive line. And so our coaches, if we were going up against somebody like the Steelers, who had big offensive line, we blitzed those guys. We couldn't afford to have our guys go up against their guys and beat their guys. But if we blitzed those guys, then the defensive backs had to be really ready to cover and expect a big challenge. And we were ready. I was a rookie. The other cornerback on the other side, named Bobby Howard, he was a veteran. He had come from the San Diego Chargers, and he was a guy that I could go talk to. I could watch film, and if I had any questions, I could go sit down with Bobby and say, Bobby, when that guy comes off the line and he starts to go across, he doesn't always go across. He goes, oh, well, Mike, he's reading this, and if he sees that, he's going to do that. And if this, so I had somebody I could talk to, and that helped me make better decisions as a rookie. And so just so you know, I led our team in mental errors my rookie year. All right? It's not like, wow, that guy was a genius. He was so smart. No. I led our team in mental errors as a rookie. But a lot of times I'd be running with the guy, and then in the middle of the play, I think, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And so I turn around, and the ball's right there.
It's good timing.
And so I get an interception. So I'd get a mental error and a plus for making a great play at the same time, And so I led our team in mental errors, but I also led our team in making plays. So
playmaking's huge.
Yeah.
I want to chime in real quick though, Mike,
okay.
on something you touched on your teammate Bobby when you were coming in as a rookie, playing cornerback, arguably one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL, and dialing back to trust, right? You trust the advice he was giving you, and that kind of ties into teamwork, right? Everybody in this room is on some form of team, whether it's your family, whether you play any sports or athletics, whether you're in any groups or et cetera, right? Teamwork's very important, and he was able to kind of mentor you a little bit. What was that like to have that leadership and that kind of trust / teamwork bond with Bobby, and I guess in general with the Patriots?
Well, with him, his personality was great, and to be totally honest with you, I might have been bothering him, asking so many questions. He wasn't like saying, come over here, sit down here, I'm gonna teach you. It was, me looking at film, and he walked in the room and he's looking at film, and I said, yeah, look at that guy, you see what he's doing there, da-da, and then he would respond and tell me this stuff, and I go, wow, he knows so much. Bobby, what year is this for you? 12? Okay. So I'd ask him all questions. I'd ask him questions when we're looking at film, when it's just the two of us. I'd ask him questions during the defensive meetings when the room is full of just defensive backs and with their coaches. I'd ask Bobby, not the coach. We go on the field and I'd say, Bobby, how do you do this? And Bobby, how do you do that? And so luckily, I had a veteran on the team that knew a lot about the quarterbacks we were going against the wide receivers we're going to be covering. It wasn't like another guy that was inexperienced like me who were going over there, doing the best we could. He would say, that quarterback has a strong arm. If you watch him on the out routes, he has an unbelievable arm. His favorite route is a Q route, which you guys don't know what that is, but I know what it is. And so be on the lookout for that. And on first down, he likes to do this. On second down, so he was helping me. I had an unbelievable start because I had guys like that who were veterans to talk to. I can't imagine having a team that's loaded with first and second year players winning. If they're winning, their coaches better be super good at coaching and inspiring those guys and saying the right things to them so they'd be making the right decisions. I felt really blessed, and I really realized later. I didn't realize at the time what I was experiencing, the luck that I was having people like that on my team. But the one thing that I have to take credit for is I always asked a lot of questions. Always asked a lot of questions. Are there any defensive backs in the room? Any defensive football players in the room? All right. You got to ask questions, and the coach was, be on the board and they'd put up all this stuff and then they'd turn around and say, any questions? Nobody would raise their hand. I'm in the National Football League. I'm raising mine. I got to know, hey, coach, you just said that if that back goes in motion and then he comes back across here, that you always run this play. I'm going, how do you know they always run this play? Why are you saying they always run this play? What if they don't run this play? What do you think they're going to? I'm asking questions. And that helped me. I felt really kind of strange because how do you think the veterans were responding to me? They're like this. Oh, God. Oh, man. This is going to be a long meeting. Oh, gosh. And so, I didn't care. I felt like I'm a first-round pick. Everybody's expecting me to play well. I'm not going to go out there on that field and have a gazillion questions in my head. I'm not going to go bother these players and ask them questions one at a time. And if everybody in this room understands what I'm asking, and the reason I'm asking, then I'm probably on a good team. And when everybody was saying, oh gosh, this is going to be a long meeting, I realized later, not then, but later, that they just didn't want to stay in the room for the meeting. And so asking those questions, and guess what? In the game, those things happen. I said, okay, coach, you're saying that whenever that quarterback does this, he always does this. I said, coach, if he doesn't do that, what is he most likely to do? And he'd say, oh, Haynes, and he'd turn around and he would erase something and he would start writing on the board and he would just put up there what they did 2 years ago or something like that,
I think you hammered it home, right? Asking questions. That can be outside of the game of football. That can be applied to work, to school specifically, right? From a teacher standpoint, I'm sure teachers love when students ask questions because that's the willingness to learn, and that's how you get better in the classroom, in the field, even in your job and career, right? Because, from your shoes, you're coming in as a rookie, from my standpoint too, coming into a new organization, I don't know everything. And, the people that have been here 20 years, 12 years, et cetera, pick their brain and be able to learn from them and grow in whatever field you might enter into. And I think
I wished I had been asking my algebra teacher questions.
Kind of the next Albert Einstein, you never know, right? I kind of want to tie back into the relationship question because I think that's very important. You talked about all the relationships, between your players and your coaches in the organization specifically, but let's look outside of the game of football. Was anybody kind of your support system, when you go to Arizona State, when you get drafted, did you have an outside support system saying, hey, Mike, you can achieve greatness, you can be a great football player?
Well, the experience I had at in college, my high school experience, I wish I could be super proud of what happened in high school. My high school team sucked. I was the quarterback. My senior year, they moved me to quarterback. The way I got moved to quarterback is I ran a pass route, and the guy threw a bad ball, and I had the ball, and I threw the ball back. And when I threw the ball back, everybody, oh my God, we're gonna move you to quarterback. So they moved me to quarterback, which I was very happy about, but I didn't get to call my own plays. They were calling the plays. And we lost every single game that we had. We tied one game at the end. And so when I got to college, I wanted to be a quarterback because I wanted to prove that really I'm not a bad quarterback. I'm a good quarterback. I want to prove it here. But I didn't get a chance, and I realized because of the record that we had the year before with me at quarterback, 0-7-1, there is no way I'm going to get to play quarterback. And so I said, okay, I'll be a wide receiver. I played that position, but ended up later playing defensive back because they needed me. They needed help on the defense. They needed somebody that was fast, and they picked me to move over there. And I ended up starting the last 3 games, and including the Fiesta Bowl. I forgot where I was going with this.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting a good point. You talked about, well, we'll go back to my question, but I think what you were kind of going on, it's like you were willing to do anything for the team, right? You were making position changes, which is not easy, right, from a learning standpoint. Right. But you were going out there and giving it your all. But the question I had was, relationships outside of the game of football. Was there a support system you had that kind of encouraged you to continue your football career, your football journey?
I learned an awful lot from playing football, actually from sports. And if I had a good coach, I could learn a ton. And so the coaches that I had in high school that were really good, I couldn't talk to them. They weren't friendly. They weren't saying, oh, come on over here, let's talk about this. They were like, I thought I told you this. I thought I told you that. There were guys like that. And I just played, and when I got to college, it was a little bit different. Our head coach, Frank Cush, I don't know if any of you guys know who he is, but he played football himself. He went to Michigan State, and Michigan State evidently had great players and great coaches, and they had a great mindset. And so him coming to Arizona State and bringing that mindset with him, when he became the head coach, he tried to get all players to think the way he thought. And I never asked him one single solitary question because I was kind of afraid of him. I was afraid that if I asked the wrong question, it might be a question that I'm supposed to already know the answer, and I could not ever play because he got mad at me or something like that. So as a freshman being on the defense, in a lot of ways, I was avoiding him because he was more on the offense. He would be, during practices, most head coaches go and stand with the offense and watch the offensive stuff. But, not all head coaches, but he did. And so that was a blessing for me. But later, he ended up liking me. And I never will forget how my senior year, he said positive things about me. I never knew he felt that way about me until he did. And it encouraged me. It made me feel good about the things that I had done and the things I wanted to do and the people that were like him. So when I would hear different coaches say different things, I realized there's more to this than what I'm just hearing.
Right.
So.
I think we can all kind of relate to that message. There's probably people in our lives that, sometimes we think they're really hard on us, and in reality they probably are, but they're doing it, for a good reason. They see your
like
potential.
Parents.
Yeah, like your parents, right?
Like your parents,
They
kids.
tell you to do something, they're not doing it just because.
Yeah.
They're telling you to do it for the right reasons.
There's a good reason.
Yep. Okay, I think that's a good time. I have a ton of questions here for you, Mike, but let's turn it over to our students here. Our teammates can run. We'll go right in the back, and he's got a mic. And
I believe you were a defensive back.
Yes.
And, remember Frank Midfield and Hanford Dixon?
I do remember them.
Okay. Well, I talked to Hanford Dixon, and I was in his suite, and I said, you and Midfield were probably the best duo. And he told me, well, there's one person better. He said, it's a fellow person who played for the Raiders. And I told him, well, I kind of know his name. Is that the guy who stuck his hand in glue all the time? I said, he might have been better, but he cheated. And I took a kick out of that. Because that was, to me, I don't know. This was the 80s, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, Midfield out from Cleveland, so, running by 88 to driving a fumble, so I'm a little, disappointed. Still hoping on the bucket list, please, so.
Well,
I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, the guy who stuck his hand in sticky stuff, that wasn't me. That was Lester.
Lester Hayes.
So Lester Hayes had been a linebacker, and they moved him to cornerback because the dude ran a 4.3 40. 4.3. That's flying. And so if they could teach him to cover a guy man-to-man with that kind of speed, they'd have a great defense. And back in those days when he was at Texas A&M, I think they had the fastest defense in the country. They had so many guys. When you look at film of their defense, there'd be like 7 guys on the tackle. There'd be 7 guys around the ball carrier. They were just fly, 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 fly. They were everywhere. Fastest defense ever. When they moved him to cornerback, he couldn't catch. So he'd be over there, knocking the ball around and stuff, and drop the ball. And then when he got to the pros, Cliff Branch, who was a wide receiver, always used that sticky stuff, the stickum. And what he did though is he had made a little cup and put the stickum in there. And he would just put his hands in there and then put it on his fingers and like that. So it was just on his fingertips. So Lester took that stuff and put it on his chest, and he would just go like this. So
I'm sure he didn't have any issues dropping the ball then.
So he didn't drop a lot of balls. And if you've ever looked at film of him, he would catch the ball like if the wide receiver, this is the wide receiver and this is him running with the guy, and he looks back like this and he sees the ball coming and he goes like this and just puts his hand up. The ball could stick to the back of his hand. And then he would pull it down and pull it in and stop and turn around. And so he led the league in interceptions that year. And then the league changed the rule where you could not use stickum because the quarterbacks just could not live with that.
I can see why. All right, we got some more questions. Students who have cards, raise your hand and come around with the mic and we'll get you.
How were you able to handle the spotlight and to remain humble throughout your NFL time?
Well, the way I was able to remain humble and deal with the spotlight is, as a kid, I was very shy. I didn't talk a whole heck of a lot. But whenever I did talk, people would say nice things about what I just said. And so that was kind of encouraging me to speak, you know. And I would always talk to my teammates, and I'd always say positive things. I don't think I ever in college or high school said anything negative about any of my teammates. So even if the guy dropped the ball, I wouldn't go over to him and say what like my coach, Frank Cush, would say. Frank Cush was, God damn you, what are you doing? I wasn't one of those kind of guys, you know. I said, hey man, when that ball was coming, it was coming at your waist. Why did you have your hands that way? Turn your hands the other way. You know, I would try to help, not hurt, not make him regret what just happened. And I think that later that turned out to be one of the things that was one of my assets that helped every team I ever played on. And no matter what the sport was, it was just kind of the way I was raised, the way I was.
Yeah, I think that's a great message, you know, from a humble standpoint, right? Being that stable support system for, you know, relationships, even teammates, right, you mentioned. And I'm sure we all make mistakes, right? You've probably made mistakes in your football career and you learn from those, but not getting on them about it, being encouraging, right? And that kind of helps build them up and, you know, build that camaraderie. We'll do another student question here, and then I'm going to interject with one of my own. So students, say your name and what school you're from. That way we can know who's talking to us up here.
My name is Jack. I'm from Copley. If you could play with other Hall of Famers of your choice, who would you choose?
I'm biased right there. That's a good name. My name is Jack as well, as I stated earlier, but I'll repeat that question. If you could play with another Hall of Famer, I know you've played with some throughout your career, but I guess you have the full roster here. If you could pick one, who would it be?
As what, another defensive back? Or
Could be a defensive back, could be a linebacker, a defensive lineman, safety. I mean, we can go quarterback too if you want.
I'd have a difficult time picking one person. I really would. Because I think I'd have to look at the situation. Is this a running situation? Is this a passing situation? You know, what is the situation? Then I'd make a choice. Like, I wouldn't pick a defensive back if the other team is only going to run. I wouldn't pick a quarterback if the team is not going to pass. So that's a great question, but I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. Yeah.
Well, I think what we can learn from that question is, though, football's so unique, right?
Very unique.
11 different people doing 11 different things, and run, pass, you need your teammates.
You need your teammates.
So he can't pick, he needs all 382 Hall of Famers on his team, right?
Yeah.
We'll go one more question.
I'm ready for this.
My name is Hakim Kapir. Important is to support group around you in past.
How important is a support group around you? Thank you. That's a great question. You know, support group. I think we talked about this a lot, kind of a bit already, but you know, support groups, right? Throughout your career, being able to uplift you, even uplifting others. How important was a support group throughout your NFL career?
Support group, I never had one until I got to college.
Yeah.
And in high school, I had a horrible high school experience. We didn't have support groups. Our coaches were horrible. And I didn't know what a horrible coach was until I had a good coach. Had no idea. And when I got to college, the seniors were really a big part of the support group. They would look at the freshmen, they would talk to the freshmen. After practice, he would walk over, put a water in front of you and say, you know, man, don't let Coach Cush get you upset. Let me tell you why he's doing what he's doing. So everybody on that team when I was in college was trying to make our team better. They did not want our team to fall apart. And so our seniors, especially our seniors, would do what that guy did. He would single a guy out or get another guy and go over and talk with the guy. They'd have lunch with the guy or something, you know. While they're getting their ankles taped, they'd start talking about stuff. And so I learned on a team, you gotta think as a team. You can't be on a team and be downplaying the way he's doing it or she's doing it. You can't do that. You need to build up every single one of them. And if they don't want to get built up, then leave them alone, you know. Just let them be an asshole, you know. Just let them be that way. All right. But teamwork, and so my senior year, our team was undefeated. Why were we undefeated? Because it took that long for me and the other team captain to understand what it took to win. It took positive thinking. It took all of us having the same mindset. We had to all have our own goals. And so what we would do, we'd have meetings and say, okay, it's a defensive meeting, defensive guys, give me some goals for this game against Nebraska, this game against Arizona, this game against Colorado State, you know. And so we would write these goals down, you know, of how we want to tackle. So when we're practicing those tackles. We're practicing about knocking the ball out. We're practicing about getting our hands up and making it difficult for the offense. And so, you know, working together as a unit. And so our defensive team, we were a unit. And by the time I was a senior, I realized when I was a team captain, I had to be on the offensive side and the defensive side. Before, I was 100% on the defensive side. I would knock down every pass that the quarterback would throw. But by the time I was a senior, if I did the exact same thing, I'd go over and say, hey man, why do you throw the ball over there? Throw it over there. Don't throw it when the guy's over here. That guy can break, and if he breaks, he could make an interception. That could be a touchdown. So I'd help our quarterbacks get better. I'd help our running backs make better cuts. It's different things. Like, you got to realize you are on a team. It's not about you starting and you being great. It's about you starting, you being great, and the team plays great. And they win games. And so how do you do that? You have to understand the game. You have to understand what the linebackers do. If they do their job, then I can do my job. If they can't do their job, I might not be able to do my job. And so, like, when the play starts, and now we're looking at film afterwards, and that linebacker's there, or my coach is there, or that linebacker coach is there, I would say something. I said, why are you taking him on with your right shoulder when I'm out there? Why aren't you taking him on with the other shoulder? And they go, good idea. So I realized the more we could communicate together, the more we could talk and answer the question, the better our team was going to be. And by the time I was a senior in college and I was a team captain, I really understood that. And when I was drafted to the Patriots as a rookie, I understood it more. And so as a rookie, I wasn't a silent rookie that just raised my hand in the back of the room. You know, I wasn't one of those kind of guys. I'd say, Coach, if that guy goes in motion and that guy does that, what if that guy does that? And he goes, good question, Mike. And then he would answer it, and now everybody in that room knows exactly what to do, all right? And I feel like asking those kind of questions, that encouraged other guys to ask questions, linemen to ask questions in their meetings with just the linemen and the coaches, and made us a better team.
Right.
And so wherever I went, and whatever I did, football, I started to learn really that if I owned a business, if I was in business, and I'd try to help my business by asking questions and getting the answers.
Right, asking questions, working as a team, showing good leadership skills, speaking up, right? That's all something we can take in life, whether it's career, through school, right? You mentioned through football and even business, right? You know, we all are working together, whether it's your family, even through, you know, your job or organization, you're all working together for one goal. So why not be a good teammate night? Why not be that support system, you know, throughout your family and throughout your organizations that you're involved in?
Yeah, wait. So like kids like their age, young kids, they're in elementary school and the teacher is explaining something. They don't normally ask questions like, what do we do? How do I do? They don't ask questions. You know, they go home. They might ask their mom and their dad. Their mom and their dad may or may not be able to answer the question. But the most important thing, he needs to know the answer. So parents should tell their kids, you know, son, I don't know the answer to that. Ask your teacher tomorrow. Get the answer. Because I think it's important. I realize now how important the answers are and how important your personality is affected by not knowing the answer and by getting the answer.
Yeah.
So
you gotta be curious, right?
You gotta be.
Okay. We talked a lot about your NFL career and a little bit about your college career, but I want to ask you one question about being a Hall of Famer, right? Part of being a Hall of Famer, we have all three items sitting here today, actually, which is pretty unique. You got your Hall of Fame K Jewelers Ring of Excellence on, your Haggard Gold jacket, and your bronze bust sitting in the case right next to you. What does it signify to you? What does it mean to be a Hall of Famer?
Well, I don't really know if it means the same thing to every single Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But what it means to me is all the things that I did to become a Hall of Famer were important and should be shared and can be shared. And if guys hold information in, things don't change a whole heck of a lot. And so for me, being a Hall of Famer, I realized that that's why when I speak to football fans and people who love the sports and kids who want to be great athletes, it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about, all right? Is saying different things to help them keep advancing and getting better. And seek the right answer. Go ask that coach. Be on the, do the right things. If you're supposed to do your homework, do your homework. If you don't do the homework because you don't know how to do the work, tell the teacher the next day, I didn't know what to do. Be honest. Be honest.
I really like that message, and I think that's a great way that we'll wrap up the program here. It's about the journey, right? About the journey of life, honestly. Everybody in this room has a different journey. Mike, yours is landing in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and you never know what's going to happen, but it's the steps along the way. It's the relationships, the goals, the trust, the support systems that you build, the people around you. We talked a lot about all the messages today in this program, and I think obviously it helped you be a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but the thought is it can help all of us in this room and all those that will listen after the fact of this program is that we can all take those values and apply them to our life, learn and grow and be, great people, right? Heart of a Hall of Famer, that's the message here. We want you guys in this room to show the great heart and have that Hall of Fame life, right? So I'm going to thank you, Mike.
Wait. There's one thing
one more thing he wants to add.
No, he made me think of something.
Okay.
All right, is setting goals. When I was a young kid, I never set a goal. I didn't set one single solitary goal where I wrote it down or any of that kind of stuff as a kid. But really, I realized later, I was setting goals. I wanted to be better than you. I wanted to be better than you. I want to be just like you, So in a sense, that's setting goals. But it wasn't until I got to college and we actually had a professional guy come in and teach us how to set goals. And we'd set goals for the entire defense. And so if our goal was to be the number one defense in our conference. Okay, if that's the goal, then what is your goal? What position do you play? You play defensive back. So what do you do as a defensive back? Well, I got to be in good shape. I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to do that. 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 These are goals that you now, when you're doing sit-ups and push-ups and stuff like that, before it didn't matter. I'll do 6, I'll 7, I'll do 100, whatever. It didn't matter. But when you had a goal and you were doing those push-ups to achieve those goals, it did matter. And so as kids, I think if parents were talking to their kids and say, how do we get you an A in math? How do we do that? How do we do that? How can I do that? So what do you have to do to get an A in math? If mom and dad can't help, do you know, will mom and dad go get somebody that can help? Or is mom and dad gonna let them stay where they are? So that's, so goal setting is what became super important in my life in college, not before that. And then when I got into the pros and joined the Patriots, they really became really became important. And then the thing that is also important is your health. It's the friends that you make. It's the things that you accomplish. Goal setting is super important. It motivates you to do a lot of things. And if you don't set any goals, you're not going to be happy. I don't think you're going to be happy. So anyway, I haven't had a conversation like this with a group like you folks here in a long time. And I'm glad that I'm having it because it's going to motivate me again to set some goals. I'm 72 years old. I set a goal when I had prostate cancer to live to be 120. I want to live a long time. And before I had that as one of my goals, people could do whatever they want. They could smoke cigarettes, they could drink like crazy, they could do all these different things. But when it became a goal of mine, I started realizing, that guy must not want to live to be very old. Wow, that guy must. And so, so those things made me started changing. So goals are important. So I like to talk to people about goals because you setting your own goals, the things that you want to do, is super important. And super important to be serious about trying to achieve those goals. And it'll make a difference in your lives.
Absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, speak about the goals, right? If you speak it into existence, it'll, in theory, happen, right? And you won't know until you try. And, you obviously said you didn't start setting goals until you were in college. But right now, students in here, right, set goals now, and you never know what you might be able to achieve. So thank you again, Mike, for the program. Thank you to our partners, Extreme Networks, and thank you to our guests today. Yep, let's give Mike a round of applause here.
Thank you. Good job.
Great job, too. Thank you. And with that, we're going to wrap up the program today. Thank you.